Bailey, let us know when we're live.
We should be live now.
Please join me in a salute to our flag.
Pledge allegiance
to the
flag
flag of the United States of America
And
to the republic for which it
stands,
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with justice for all.
justice for all.
Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of New Jersey, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2022 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2021, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Status,
Here.
Ms. Cripe,
Here,
Mr. DeLuca,
Here.
Mr. McGehee,
Here.
Mayor Daffis.
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231 Public Laws of 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires that all meetings of public bodies be open to the public. And whereas Section 7A provides that the governing body has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting, and whereas desire the governing body to comply with the provisions of this act, same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner, now therefore be resolved by the Township Committee, Township Maplewood, does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the governing body by the public, and except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observation of the actions and discussions of the governing body at all its regular and special meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Ms. Cripe,
yes,
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
McGehee,
Yes.
Mayor Daffis.
Yes. Thank you, Township Clerk Fritzen. We appreciate that. And welcome, friends and neighbors, to our Township Committee public session. A lot has happened since we last convened, a whole lot in town. So we have a lot to cover tonight. We have a very robust agenda, a few discussion items, and I have a lot to say myself, so buckle up. I'm going to walk you through our agenda. Tonight, we're going to start our agenda with a presentation to the governing body by our Community Board on Police. They're going to do their required annual report. And this is the first time that they're doing so as part of our Township Committee public sessions. And I think it's going to break new ground for other boards and committees as well. This is a great opportunity for our residents to learn more firsthand about our boards and committees and to meet some of our excellent and committed volunteers on those boards and committees. That certainly helps us in recruiting new volunteers, new residents who want to serve the community. So we'll start with that. And then we will move into public comment. The first public comment period is always for agenda items only, 3 minutes max per person. And we'll start the public comment period of this portion with our county liaison who's with us tonight, Valentina Richardson Green. We appreciate her joining us. She may have some news from the county, and we may have some requests of her as well. Then we'll move over into our ordinances. We have one ordinance on final passage tonight, and we have 2 introductions of ordinances on first reading. Then we will have our report from departments, if any such reports are tonight. And then we'll go into administrative reports. We'll hear from Township Administrator Gimes, then from Township Attorney Desiderio, and then from Township Clerk Fritzen. And that will bring us to reports from us, the elected officials. We'll start with Deputy Mayor DeLuca, then Committee Member Adams, followed by Committee Member McGehee, followed by Committee Member Cripe, and I always go last. Our discussion items are 5 this evening. We will talk about the leaf blower, our leaf blower ordinance, and considering a year-round restriction of gas-powered leaf blowers. And I dearly hope that this is the final time that we're going to be discussing this. We have discussed this issue so much, I feel like, in the past couple of years, if not longer than that. So I really urge us to make a decision on this evening. Then Committee Member McGeehee will lead us into a discussion of the Fire Services Regional Service Agency Agreement that he and Deputy Mayor DeLuca have been working very hard on for months now, along with our colleagues in South Orange. And then Mr. McGeehee is also going to talk about a public forum, looking at the intersection of public safety with engineering and traffic calming. There is an intersection there. And talking about hopefully more than just the Springfield, Tuscan, Burnett intersection, as there are other intersections that our residents are concerned about, but we'll get into that during the discussion. Deputy Mayor DeLuca will talk about our Sustainable Jersey certification. We're really excited about that and all the hard work that is going into that to meet the deadline fast approaching. And then again, Committee Member McGeehee will ask for our support of the Community Solar Project, which is a great project. We have 17 items on the consent agenda this evening, and I'd like to highlight a few of those in particular. We have the resolution number 9422, that's resolution I. Finally, we're awarding a contractor for the Duck Pond Bridge repair. We know that this is something that's been front of mind for a lot of our residents who frequent Memorial Park and our commuters who walk by there a lot. And the bridge has been way overdue for repair, and then recent storms made it even worse. And we've had some difficulties and challenges cordoning off that area. So I'm really excited to award this contract and to get that construction going this year. Resolution number, just a minute here. We have our resolution number, I thought I had all these things in order here. Yes, resolution number 89-22, which is resolution D in support of the Reparations Task Force of New Jersey. We discussed this last time. I'm really pleased to see us adopting it this evening, hopefully unanimously. And our resolution in support of Ukraine, resolution number 90-22, resolution E. As we talked about last time, we stand with Ukraine, the people of Ukraine, the Ukrainian diaspora around the world, with our Ukrainians right here in our community of Maplewood. We have a strong Ukrainian community. We call for peace and a ceasefire. And we ask that the United States does what it can, and the United Nations, in reaching a resolution and expanding humanitarian aid for the hundreds of thousands of refugees. In fact, I heard earlier from someone that they're now reporting that every minute, 55 children are orphaned through this crisis. That is astounding and absolutely horrific. So we call to an end to this and a resolution, and I'm really excited that we'll be adopting a resolution standing in solidarity with Ukraine. We have ordered a couple Ukrainian flags to fly prominently in town as well, one by the flagpole outside of the municipal building, and another one by the flagpole at the Hilton branch of our library. The first flag arrived and is already flying outside of our municipal building. We put it up today. We're very proud of that. And we will be talking with our Ukrainian, our local Orthodox church, to see if we can have some sort of very brief, but no less powerful or impactful or important a flag raising ceremony this weekend. And I will certainly post in socials about that. I think that's important. The Chamber of Commerce is also preparing for a major Ukrainian fundraiser on March 26th. They're collaborating with our local Soma clergy. They're collaborating with United Way of Newark, and all the donations and funds of that will go into the United Way Global, which is the premier resettlement agency. So I will be posting about that as well, and all we can do to support that is very important. And as we talk about children who are displaced from their families, I can't stop but thinking about all of the children that we heard about in our community and the trauma that they went through during virtual learning and due to masking and other COVID mitigation measures. We received hundreds of emails about this in the past 2 to 3 weeks. And I really think that when you look at what looks like World War II refugee pictures, when you think about those children and what they're going through, it really puts things in perspective for us here and lets us really truly recognize and acknowledge our privilege, all things considered. Yesterday on Monday, March 14th, marked officially 2 years since we reported our first COVID deaths in Maplewood. This has been weighing on me very heavily. And I want to acknowledge that tonight. And I want to talk about what we can do as we're moving away from COVID and mitigation and masking and all of this stuff and trying to get back to normal and resuming whatever we remember of our lives before. COVID is still with us. The high school today is reporting a surge. The musical is experiencing delays, performances being canceled and rescheduled due to COVID transmission. So COVID is not gone. And we can never forget the millions of people around the world who lost their lives. So during our Board of Health meeting on the 5th of April next month, I will be talking about a memorial that I think would be really nice to do in Maplewood, to never forget, to honor and reflect and dedicate. It's really, really important. And so before we get into our agenda tonight, I'd like to ask you all to join me and us in a moment of silence for all of those innocent civilian lives that are being lost right now in Ukraine, and for our own COVID victims here in Maplewood. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you for that. So let's move on with our agenda. And as I said earlier, we are going to start with a presentation by our Community Board on Police. I turn it over to them.
Terrific. Thank you. I'm just getting the presentation up here. Remember. Sorry, I'm not remembering where the full screen presentation is. Okay, well, that's good enough, right? Okay, good. Hi, everybody.
It's in slideshow. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. It should be a slideshow if you want to make it full
good,
screen.
right? I think we're good enough, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I'm just going to go with this here. All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Mayor Jaffes, for giving us the opportunity to do our annual report here at the Township Committee meeting. We're going to try to make this brief, but know that we have sort of a more thorough report that we'll be putting up on our site once that site comes live. But we're really excited to have this opportunity to share where we've been, where we're going, and introduce community members to who we are and what we do. So with that, I'm going to jump right in. Oops, sorry.
Kasha,
so-
would you introduce yourself first?
Oh, sure. Well, I was going to get to that when we talk about the board members. So
Fair enough. Sorry about.
no problem. Okay, so first, we want to give a thank you to the community and to the Township Committee for helping us be who we are and for supporting our mandate. We are new. We are still figuring out exactly who we want to be when we grow up and what our true impact is going to be. But we wouldn't be here without the support of the community, and we're really here to serve you. So for those of you who are attending this meeting, who are watching on YouTube, and who watch this later on, we really want, we are one of those boards where we want the community to participate. So please come attend our monthly meetings. They're hosted the first Wednesday of every month at 7:30. When you go to the Township calendar, you can find that. You can also reach us online. We have a contact us link where you can post anonymously or not. And we'd love to hear from you. This is, we are here to serve. We're here to serve you. Okay, so quick history of the board for those who don't know. This all kicked off in July of 2016 when there was an unfortunate incident involving teens of color and our local police department. That led to the development of this a community board on police, which had its first meeting in 2019. So we have about 3 years of history behind us in figuring out, as I said, who we're going to be and where we're going to focus. We spent the first portion of the last few years really sort of getting lay of the land, figuring out where we can really have some influence, taking a look at a lot of data. And then over the last year or so, we've really narrowed in on a handful of key objectives that we want to focus on in the short term and in the long term. And then we're just building momentum off of those objectives. So we're going to cover some of those later on in this meeting, but this just serves as a reminder of how new we are. And again, you can take a look at this at your leisure to see some of the key moments that have as we've evolved over time. Okay, so I am fortunate to be joined here by 3 other members, but you can see the board is much bigger than what we've got represented here. So we have, technically we should have 9 voting members. We do have an open seat. So again, for those who are attending or watching online, this is a good opportunity to get to know what we do, and those applications are due. I think Bailey can remind me, but I think it's maybe April 10th or April 5th, or maybe it's April 10th, something like that. Nonetheless, so I'm one of the co-chairs. My name is Kasha Piakash. I sit on the Soma Justice seat. So you'll see that there are 3 seats on the board that are assigned to local community groups who are all part of the creation of the board. I co-chair the board with Io, who is unable to join us today. And then we have 6 other voting members. I'm joined by Erin Scherzer, who sits on the Community Coalition of Race seat, Alexis Carteron, and then our youth member, Piper Davenport, is joining us on the call as well. And then we've got a whole bunch of people from the township who also help make all of this happen. So Mayor Daffis and Township Committee member McGeehee are our liaisons. Deputy Chief Sally participates in this. And then we also have our business administrator, Jerry Jimes, and Bailey, who helps make everything happen. And then Ian Grodman, who serves as our board attorney. So this is all to say, this is a big collaborative effort to make all of this happen. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Erin to give a brief overview of what we do and, importantly, what we do not do.
So thank you, Kasha. I also want to acknowledge, just for members of the public and to remind members of our governing body, whether they're one of the elected members or one of the administrators, that our board has no model. We are the first in the state to get as far as we have gotten. And so with that, we really needed a strong foundation, which started back in late 2017 and 2018 in the creation of the charter. and taking very measured steps throughout our process, because one of the challenges we see with some of the decisions made historically in law enforcement and in public safety is sometimes those decisions are very rushed to judgment. So we have very active working meetings. We work between meetings because our community wants to be part of doing it right. And we are so happy to be partnering with the police department, who also wants to do it right, and the township. So a little bit about our charter. It is the actual ordinance. It was drafted with a combination of people, but ultimately, Mr. Desiderio, the town attorney, was the person who made sure all the I's were dotted and T's were crossed in terms of what we can and cannot do. There's many forms of civilian review boards. It's very, it's a term that's been thrown out there. Our lane under New Jersey law is pretty limited. And so what can our board do? Our board looks at data. Our board looks at engaging with members of our community and making sure we are elevating those concerns and trying to address them, whether it's a public safety matter, whether it's a matter of someone being harassed within the community. Our goal is to be a resource to the department, to help with training, to help with policy development, to help the department follow their goals in terms of being the new generation of policing. Our goal is to help our community rethink, when to call the police, when not to call the police, and look for other types of services within our community to be able to serve our needs. So we look at data, we look at policy, and we make recommendations to the township. What we can't do, and this is really important, as much as we'd love to go in there and say, we got to do this, we have to do this. We're an advisory board. And so we can't make any rules, we can't make any decisions. Our goal is to provide solid research and evidence and thoughtfulness so that the governing body and the police department can make the appropriate decisions going forward. We also don't get involved with personnel matters. There's a whole structure within municipal government to handle that. And quite frankly, we got enough to deal with in terms of reshaping and helping our community do better in some other ways. Kasha, next slide, please. So, in our country, we have over 400 years of challenges related to the treatment, the mistreatment of people in our country, and it's not going to be solved overnight. And there's so many different ways, specifically in the law enforcement space, that we can help improve matters. And so, what our board did is we had a strategic planning discussion last fall, and we focused in on some key objectives in 2021 to set our pace for 2022. We're a volunteer board, and we wanted to be realistic of what we could cover and what we couldn't cover. So what you can see here we made some changes to our charter. We are getting the social work initiative over the finish line, some traffic work, addressing some of the non-emergency 911 calls, and the training piece. Kasha, next slide. So just to tell the community a little bit about some of our charter revisions. So as I said, it was originally drafted in 2017 into 2018. We streamlined some of our process to help us with data collection. This helps with efficiency in the police department. So they're able to get information to us quickly, and we're able to analyze things quickly. But the biggest change is the New Jersey Attorney General's office has permitted civilians to engage in a limited scope review of internal affairs investigations. And I want to be abundantly clear in terms of what we're able to do. We're not involved with active investigations. We see a file, we will see a file, we haven't seen it yet, after an investigation has concluded. And our objective as a board is to look at that information and make recommendations to the department so we don't have those situations coming up in the first place. Part of having better transparency and better trust in terms of the services being provided is to make sure those situations aren't coming up in the first place. And I want to especially thank Mr. Desiderio, who jumped right back in again with all of his other drafting. And he, spent a portion of 2021 drafting this, and we are the novel board that will be taking this on in this year.
Great, thanks, Erin. All right, Piper, do you want to talk a little bit about social work?
Yes, of course. So I will quickly give you a brief rundown of the history of how we got to where we are. So in the fall of 2020, the board received a presentation from local social workers on 3 different models of integrating social work into police work, after we received some interest from both the community and the police department themselves. And then the Township Committee graciously agreed to establish a 1-year crisis intervention social work pilot program. So again, that's 1 year, and that's what we are currently in. Within the following year, the reporting structure was ironed out. We were tossing up a couple different things, but eventually landed with the social worker being housed within the health department, but still working very closely with both fire and PD. And then they will also be directly under the supervision of the Mental Health Association of Essex County, because health workers and social workers specifically need to have direct supervision by people who are trained in their area. I want to take a quick minute to offer congratulations and a huge thank you to all those within the township who took this program off the ground. We have successfully hired a well-suited individual out of our own community, and they're looking to start next month in April. So that is extremely wonderful. And then moving forward, the board is looking to receive monthly reports from both the social worker once they're installed within the structure, and then also the Mental Health Association, which is going to influence how the program moves forward once we've passed through the pilot program. I think that's all for me.
Thank you, Piper. All right, great. So I'm up next on traffic stops. So to give a little bit of history here, this was one of the first initiatives that we decided to focus on, and we still are working through some of the objectives here. A quick overview of why this is important. So first of all, I think nationally it's been recognized that there is a long history of both implicit and explicit racial discrimination when it comes to traffic stops. So we felt like it was important for us to investigate what is happening here. In addition, this is one of the most common complaints that we get from people who live around here is around speeding. And so to the extent that, as Dean was saying earlier, that there's a real intersection between policing and engineering as we figure out what we're trying to do, the goal of all of this is to increase public safety. So we wanted to make sure that we were narrowing in on traffic to understand the extent that anything that we were doing from a policing perspective was really actually improving public safety, which then gets us to the point around resource allocation. There's been a lot of calls to defund the police. And so we felt like it was part of our mandate to understand are our resources really being used in the best possible way. So very quickly, the conclusions that we drew are much more detailed than this. And once we get our page on the new website up and running, we'll have all of the previous reports available to review. But for the folks on the call today, in our initial, a couple of rounds of analysis here, we discovered that at least, looking back at the last 4 or 5 years, we're seeing that even though we have increased traffic patrols and we've created a new traffic department, that hasn't necessarily led to an improvement in public safety. So this is definitely something that we want to monitor going forward and also start thinking about, again, that intersection between PD and engineering to see what else we can continue to do, even though I know there are a lot of work streams in that direction already. We definitely saw that Black drivers, either who live here or are coming through our towns receive a disproportionately high number of citations. And so again, this was something else that we wanted to address. And I think the police department immediately started to think about where they should put patrols to better reflect kind of what we would expect to see in the population. And then, we identified, more than a dozen ways that we can improve both the data collection and what we're seeing. And again, if you go through the full reports, you'll see that there are a lot of opportunities for us to understand what's happening better. But we can't do that without improving how we're collecting the data, how we're reporting the data. And some of this goes all the way up to the state level. Ethnicity is a perfect example. As of right now, we don't have ethnicity on our licenses. And so we can't, whatever is being reported is whatever the officers are identifying as what they think the person's race is. And one of the results of that is that Latinx is being wildly underreported. And this is across the entire state. So anyway, we identified a bunch of different ways that we think we can improve what's going on here. But nonetheless, as we think about next steps, we've got a lot of recommendations for what we could do with the data. The MPD just recently changed the system that they're using for collecting data. So now that that is up and running, I think we can identify some ways that we can pull some, more automated reporting so we can see how these things are tracking over time. And then, some other recommendations in terms of, again, doing some more thorough analysis. So that way we can meet the mandate that all of this traffic stuff is meant to do, which is to increase public safety throughout the entire town. All right, and with that, I'm going to hand it over to Alexis to talk a little bit about what we're doing with training.
Hi, thanks, Kasha. Happy to be here tonight. I should mention that I'm one of two of the most recent appointees to the board. So partly I'm reporting on work that is not my own.
We appreciate you being here.
What was that?
So, but we appreciate you coming, even though.
Oh yes, I'm happy to be here. So in 2021, a major goal of the board when it comes to training was to just better educate ourselves and do some research about what the current training program looks like for the police department. And of course, looking beyond just initial training when officers join the police department, but in-service training later on. And also look for opportunities for growth. And so now we've moved on to a research phase, looking outside of the Maplewood Police Department to try to identify possible training programs that we think could be of benefit to the community and to the police department. So one area that we've been looking at is a possibility of having the police department participate in a program that's specifically designed to educate police officers about the teen brain, neuroscience of young adults. Any parents of teens out there, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, the way they think that is different than the way a lot of us more mature older people think, and de-escalation tactics that are especially useful when working with young people. And of course, this is all part of our effort to identify evidence-based strategies that can really help us move forward as a community and make policing in this community look the way we think it should look. And so beyond that, we also are looking into repeating the training that's been offered by Children's Specialized Hospital on interactions between law enforcement and people who are on the autism spectrum. It seems like this training has gotten rave reviews from some people in our community and police departments. And so that's something that we're looking into bringing back to the Maplewood Police Department. And of course, we welcome feedback from the community about other areas of interest, and we'll be working hard on this in 2022. And I'll leave it.
The autism training is a great example of community input. That training came from a community member, and then, community member came back to us and said, "Hey, it's been a few years. We should do it again." And we were like, "Absolutely! Like, there's no reason why we shouldn't call and get this back on the calendar, given that we have new officers, and it all gets worn down, but it also reflects a passionate advocacy for those in our community who are on the spectrum and protecting them from harmful interactions. So appreciate the efforts of the community here. Okay, so now moving on to some of our efforts around non-911 police calls. So really the focus of this initiative, and it's been a couple of years in the making, and we're kind of working through the final steps of putting together a full PR plan around this, an ongoing PR plan around this. And really it's just about being a better neighbor and thinking twice before calling the police for things that maybe often are not police related matters. And this is one of those issues that is, comes both from us, but also from the police department. They don't want to go on a call when somebody calls about their leaf blower. They want that to go to code enforcement too. And they don't want to respond to things that aren't real things. Whether that's, a barbecue going on a little bit long, or, a bunch of kids walking down the street. We want to be focusing our efforts on the things that are true public safety emergencies. So we've put a plan together. We've got a terrific video where the MPD participated in providing their own perspective on all of this. This is not to say that there aren't important times when you should be calling 911. But this is the beginning of a much broader effort that the board, plans as we think about the long term that we plan to take on, thinking about, just in general, how we can tap into our neighborly and our strong community ties to better handle things that are happening around us, whether that's getting deeper into the restorative justice practices that have been spearheaded by Brenda Eilertz, whether that's creating, a team of volunteer mediators who are helping to mediate neighbor-to-neighbor conflicts or other types of conflicts before they escalate into things where police would be required, and really, letting the police focus on the things that they know how to do, best. The social work program also kind of falls into that broader objective. So anyway, we're excited to finally get this going in 2022, and then building that program out a bit further. So with that, I'm going to quickly go through, a lot of what we're planning on for 2022 is based on the things that we just went over. So as Erin said, when it comes to the review of IA matters, that process is being formalized now. They just went through their initial round of training. We'll start looking at documents really soon. The PR strategy for the appropriate use of 911 should be happening we should be kicking that off in the next month or two. The training piece of it will be ongoing throughout this year. I think the social work piece is really well on its way. So we've got the person hired. And so this year we'll be focusing on, how do we establish the right measures for evaluating how the program is going, and hopefully figuring out how we grow that program in the right ways. We'll be continuing to do all kinds of, not just use of force and traffic reviews, but, much deeper data analysis. We've had to take a pause as we were transitioning into the new data system, but we're excited to get back into doing some further data analysis in a variety of different topics. And then really, as COVID allows, getting back out into the community. So we're finally getting back into the department. And then the next step is to do some door knocking and make sure that the community really knows who we are, and start getting more, back and forth between us and the community, and what they'd like us to focus on. So we've got a lot of exciting stuff coming up, and we're going to keep going. So I'm just going to repeat this one more time. Our board meetings are held the first Wednesday of the month at 7:30 p.m. via Zoom for now. We'll be taking the township's lead in terms of when we can start meeting in person, but for now it's all via Zoom. So please come and join us. We welcome public comments. We are also happy to come to you. So we have attended the Boyden Park Neighborhood Association meetings. We've been to the Hilton Neighborhood Association meetings multiple times. We spoke at the Ethical Cultural Society. We are happy to come in to the schools. We're happy to come into, churches, synagogues, whatever. We would love to interact with folks in the community in any forum that you ask. So we're happy to do that. And then, as I said earlier, you can always contact us through our Contact Us page. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Dean. Thank you so much for letting us do this here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's an incredible report. A lot of work being done by you and the other fabulous volunteers, the Community Board on Police. Thank you all for making the time tonight. I really hope that our residents tune in to our meetings the first Wednesday of every month and get involved. There's a lot of policing discussion happening right now, as our community is also experiencing an uptick in certain types of crimes, a national phenomena, certainly not Maplewood specific, but how do we combat that? What kinds of strategies can we collaborate on together? What can we do locally? And that's obviously a larger conversation for another time. but the Community Board on Police, it could be very influential and impactful because they do a lot of research at the state level, at the federal level, and these conversations are happening across the country right now. So let's make them happen here, and hopefully our residents will get involved. Because of COVID, our community outreach efforts were a little bit, behind where we wanted to be at this point. We wanted to also engage with our students in the school district. Our students are very likely to interact with members of our police department more often than not than adults. But again, due to COVID, we were isolated and haven't had those opportunities, but those opportunities will now become available. And we hope that everyone will come together and be a part of this. We also have an opening on the board. We're seeking a new member. There is a deadline of April 10th for submissions of applications for the board. And I think Assistant Township Administrator Barnett will provide the link in the chat here for attendees to share and to consider themselves. Are there any questions or remarks from my colleagues for the Community Board on Police? Okay, seeing none, thank you. You're welcome to stay with us the rest of the evening for the rest of our meeting, and we thank you once again.
Thank you.
Okay, so this brings us to our first public comment period. Again, this is for agenda items only, a limit of 3 minutes. Mr. Waltz will guide members of the public who wish to speak. The first member of the public who is with us is our County Liaison, Valentina Richardson Green. I welcome Valentina, welcome to our meeting again tonight. Thanks for being here. We open the floor to you to talk about county programs, initiatives you want to highlight, and open the floor for us to ask you questions and for members of the public to do the same. Valentina?
Thank you. Again, thank you for having me. Just wanted to provide a couple of updates of events happening in the county. On March 25th, we'll be having our Homeless Connect Day at Branch Brook Skating Rink. Hours will be from 10 to 2, located 7th Avenue and Clinton Avenue in Newark. We'll be providing health screenings, giveaways, assistance with public assistance, mental screening, employment services, veteran services. That contact number, I'll also put it in the chat, is 973-395-8350. So the next event we'll be having is a job fair that'll be taking place on March 23rd for the New Jersey courts, the Superior Courts at our Leroy Smith building. And those hours will be between 3 and 7. We'll also be having an Essex County drive-through job fair at Branch Brook Cherry Blossom Welcome Center on March 31st from 9 to 2. I previously sent out those flyers earlier, but I can send them out again so that you can share it with your constituents. The next event that we have is a Make Garbage contest. Pretty much, it's going to be creative ways of repurposing single-use plastic, non-recyclable items for art. The registration deadline is 4/8. The display is going to be on 4/16 at our Essex County Environmental Center. And the last item that I have is through our small business department. We have a free Turner School of Construction's management for minority-owned, women-owned, veteran-owned, LGBTQ+, small and disadvantaged business. They'll be having sessions with class curriculums, the requirements being in business at least 1 year, construction-oriented, must be a certified small business, minority-owned, women-owned, LGBTQ+ owned, or seeking or actively seeking certification. So I'll also provide that link information in the chat window. So at this point, if there are any questions for me, I'm open to any questions.
County Liaison Green, thank you for those important resources, particularly very interested in the small business support that you talked about. So please take the time to put all of those resources in our chat, share them with the public here, and we'll do the same on our website in the coming days. Are there questions from my colleagues for County Liaison Green? Okay, seeing none. County Liaison Green, I do have something that I'm hoping that you can look into for us, and then I'll open it up for members of the public to ask any questions of you. This is related to domestic violence. As you are aware, domestic violence is on the rise across the country. It's a very complex and multi-layered issue. And as you're aware, when we have sufficient volunteers, we have a local domestic violence response team that provides support to local domestic violence victims. But when we fall below the 20 or so people volunteers, then we go through the county's domestic violence support. And as you know, the county has a contract with the Rachel Coalition. We have received over the years, important complaints and concerns from domestic violence victims in our community about the Rachel Coalition requiring the Rachel Coalition's need for sensitivity training to meet emerging needs in our community and across communities in New Jersey. To be more inclusive in their support. We know that the Rachel Coalition's contract with the county is coming up soon for renewal, and we appreciate your looking into that for us. Can you find out who the contact there is so that we can have a conversation with them? But if that's not productive or fruitful, so that we can seek other support for our residents. I think that's really a top priority for us, a top public safety priority for us in Maplewood.
Okay, well, thank you for bringing that to my attention. I'll definitely look into a contact so that we can facilitate that conversation, just to bring it to people's attention. And sensitivity training is something I believe is something that has to go ongoing basis. It's not a one-time fits all thing. It's something that we have to constantly be reevaluating and making sure we are doing and saying the right things to service our community. So I will reach out and then I will forward you that contact information.
Terrific. You said it. It's totally true. Constantly evolving. So thank you. That's all I had on my end. Let's open it up to the public. Mr. Waltz.
Mayor, I have two hands raised, but I'm not entirely sure if they're for our public comment or for our county liaison, as they were raised before we introduced the county liaison. What would you like me to do to moving on?
Let's just move forward with the hands up, Mr. Waltz.
Okay. First up, we have Rachel Metcalf. We'll convert you over to a panelist and allow you 3 minutes to speak.
Hi. My name is Rachel Metka. Good evening, Mayor Daffis and Township Committee members. With Maplewood's gas leaf blower ordinance on the agenda, I would like to take a few minutes to speak. Tonight, I will give a brief recap of Quiet Maplewood's involvement and then speak about the politics of two issues: the responsibility of policymakers and the protection of the status quo. Since January 2021, Quiet Maplewood members and medical experts have presented the facts and the science about gas leaf blowers and the risk they pose to the health of operators and residents. Evidence shows the health hazards citizens are exposed to from gas leaf blowers outweigh the possible benefit they provide. The first issue is the responsibility of policymakers. It is the responsibility of this committee and our health department to educate residents on the hazards of gas-powered leaf blowers and set proper policy. Gas-powered leaf blowers produce dangerous levels of airborne particulate matter, nitrogen dioxide, and ozone, among other toxic cancer-causing compounds. A recent Harvard School of Public Health study found that hundreds of thousands of lives could be saved by improving the quality of air that Americans breathe. Residents, children, and workers should be free from the damaging gas, leaf blower pollution, just as they should be free from secondhand smoke in public buildings. Even though we have seen tremendous public support on this issue, public opinion should not be the driving force for a vote. There is enough scientific evidence for the health department and the township committee to take the lead and educate the residents of the impermissible dangers of these machines. The second issue is protecting the status quo. At this point, allowing gas leaf blowers in Maplewood is ignoring the facts. It's a vote to support the status quo rather than act on factual information from our most trusted institutions to protect the health of residents and workers in Maplewood. In New York and New Jersey, bills that ban the use and sale of gas leaf blowers are making their way through the Senate. Let's be the example for them to look to, not wait for someone to do it for us.
30 seconds.
I believe this town's leaders have the courage to take the necessary steps to protect the health of residents and workers. This policy is for the sake of the public good. One does not vote for it because of popularity. One votes for it because it is the right thing to do. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Metka. Mr. Waltz?
Mr. Mayor, next we have Tracy Woods. We'll convert you to a panelist and allow you 3 minutes to speak. You're muted. Ms. Woods, you're muted.
Gosh, like 2.5 years into this, you'd think I'd know how to do it by now. My apologies. I just wanted to call in and express my support for the community solar resolution that is on the agenda for tonight. I'm so excited that we're going to be looking at this as a community. I think it's a great opportunity to bring the benefits of renewable energy to more members of our community and to help reduce the bill, the energy burden, the amount of money that residents spend on their energy bill every month. And I'm really glad we're going to be discussing this tonight. I also, wasn't aware that the leaf blower ordinance is on the agenda for tonight, but of course, I always support the work that the Quiet Maplewood Committee and the Maplewood Environmental Advisory Committee do in that. And I hope that you will consider passing the ordinance. Thank you for your time tonight.
Ms. Woods, before you go, thank you. And I want to thank you for your continuous, tireless, overly committed work on sustainability in Maplewood and for the state of New Jersey. I was on a meeting earlier on a Zoom with you and Deputy Mayor DeLuca. They were presenting EV chargers, and that was fascinating. And of course I saw you there. You are just really plugged in, and we are so grateful and fortunate to have your expertise and your energy and your passion in our community. So thanks for coming tonight and doing this as well.
Well, I wouldn't be as dedicated if you guys didn't support so much. So thank you so much for the support.
Mayor, next we have John Sullivan. We'll convert you to a panelist and allow you 3 minutes to speak.
Hello? You got me. I just want to commend the Community Board on Police for the tremendous job and work that they've done since they've been formed, and also the Township Committee for giving them the support that they need, and the administration. The placing of the social worker, I think, is going to be beneficial for the community as a whole. And again, something else that they should be commended for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan.
Mayor, next we have Joan Crystal. We'll convert you to a panelist and allow you 3 minutes to speak.
My question actually is for the county representative. There's a perception in the senior community that Essex County Special Transportation is not being responsive to the needs of Maplewood seniors. That there's difficulty reaching people on the phone when trying to schedule a ride. There is difficulty with people being told that certain rides have already been fully subscribed and therefore the need of the senior cannot be accommodated. There have been problems with late arrivals for both pickup and for pickup at the other end. I'd appreciate if you could look into this for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I will definitely follow up with our director in senior services to see what we can do to evaluate what's going on in terms of the items you listed with the pickup, late arrivals, as well as being unable or having difficulty with reaching anyone to resolve your questions or concerns. So I'll have that follow-up information at our next meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Crystal, for making the time tonight and being, as always, our #1 senior advocate in town. You really have moved us forward in so many important ways in age friendliness and older adult support. And thank you, County Liaison Green, for looking into that important transportation matter. Mr. Waltz, do we have any other members of the public in this period?
I see no one else, Mayor.
Okay, seeing none, we're going to close the public comment period. We thank again our County Liaison Green for joining us tonight and looking into some of these matters that we raised. County Liaison Green, you're welcome to stay if you have nothing else to do this evening, but we thank you again for your time tonight.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you. So this brings us to our ordinances. We have one ordinance on final passage this evening.
Mayor, ordinance number 3052-22 is an ordinance of the Township of Maplewood, County of Essex, State of New Jersey, reauthorizing the establishment of a government energy aggregation program. This ordinance renews Maplewood's government aggregation RGEA and Maplewood's lead agency status of the Sustainable Essex Alliance.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. At this time, is there any discussion?
I think you want public comment.
Yeah, and public comment as well. I was going to say that next. Any members of the public who want to comment on ordinance number 3052-22 regarding the establishment, reauthorizing the establishment of our energy aggregation program?
I see no one, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Waltz. Any comments or remarks or questions from colleagues? Seeing none, can I get a motion from Deputy Mayor DeLuca?
Move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Second.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Ms. Cripe?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor Daffis?
Yes, thank you. We have one of two ordinances on introduction this evening.
Yes, Mayor, introduction of new ordinance number 3053-22 is an ordinance to amend chapter 257 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Vehicles and Traffic. This ordinance will revise parking regulations on Milburn Avenue between Valley Street and Springfield Avenue.
Thank you. Can I get a motion, Deputy Mayor DeLuca?
I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and a hearing to be held on April 5th, 2022.
Second.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Ms. Cripe?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor Daffis?
Yes, yes, indeed. Second, ordinance on introduction.
Yes, Mayor. Also on introduction, ordinance number 3054-22. It's an ordinance to amend chapter 257 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Vehicles and Traffic. This ordinance will eliminate certain parking restrictions on Jacoby Street.
Can I get a motion? Deputy Mayor DeLuca.
Yes, Mayor, I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and a hearing to be held on April 5th, 2022.
Second.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Ms. Cripe,
yes,
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes,
Mr. McGehee,
Yes.
Mayor Daffis.
Yes. I don't see any department heads here. The next point in our agenda is reports from departments.
There are no reports, Mayor.
Okay, then we're going to move over to administrative reports, and we'll start with Township Administrator Gimes.
Thank you, Mayor. As you all know, we have a budget hearing Saturday afternoon. As the mayor indicated in a previous correspondence, we will be submitting some final documentation to all of you sometime tomorrow afternoon. In that information will be some updated capital requests from my office as it relates to IT. If you recall, in my initial budget presentation, I said we were hammering out some of the critical items needed to improve our IT infrastructure. And we really did work with IT just to truly request the absolute most critical items that are necessary for the security and the storage of the township. So you'll find when you get that, it's very reasonable items at very reasonable prices. So I will be submitting that to you tomorrow. Also, in furtherance of this meeting, the Finance Committee is meeting Friday morning. Mayor Daffis, Mr. McGehee, CFO Kaloje, and myself to do a prep for the meeting Saturday as well. So when we get there Saturday, you'll have the most up-to-date information in a very well-presented format. As the agenda indicates in the consent resolution, we continue to fill our DPW staff and some vacancies we have there in order to ensure the most efficient services to the residents. In addition to that, I've been working with continuously the insurance company as it relates to IDA reimbursements. So we're not duplicating anything that we're doing with FEMA. I had a conversation with the underwriter this previous week and double checked some of the information that we sent them. So I was satisfied after the conversation where that's going and the time frame that I think that will be resolved. So it'll take a little bit of time, but not anything too prohibitive, not anything more than I'm used to in previous communities. And lastly, it'll come up later in the meeting and further into the discussions as it relates to the fire department and the potential merger. I had a meeting with the administrator, Mr. Lohner, in South Orange to go over some of the financial implications of that. And we've been working together very closely to provide the necessary information to have a budget finalized for when that moves forward. And I'll save the rest of that discussion as it comes up later in the meeting. That's all I have. I'm not sure if Ms. Barnett has anything she would like to add to that. If you do, please feel free to jump in.
Yes, so I would like to make a recommendation for the compost pilot moving forward. Is now a good time for us to have that discussion? Or should we wait for a different point?
No, it certainly is. Please proceed.
Okay. Perfect. So last week, I was able to meet with the other members of the Food Waste Compost Pilot Working Group, and we discussed some of the different details that would need to be ironed out in order for the pilot to continue moving forward. So just a quick recap for anybody who hasn't seen a recording or wasn't in attendance at the last Township Committee meeting. The Township Committee agreed to extend the pilot through the end of 2022 with evaluation at that point, but the specifics of the program were not decided on at that point, as we just received updated pricing for 2022 from Java's Compost, which is the company that we're currently receiving service from. So after receiving that pricing and estimating the cost over the period of time, it actually ended up being slightly less than what we had paid for the first 6 months of the pilot. So we were able to determine actually that the number of toters, first and foremost, that were used for the pilot for the first 6 months were not full every week. And we believe that there is enough space remaining in those toters for 20 additional households to participate. So our first recommendation is that the pilot be increased to 70 households from 50, so that the cost of that same number of toters and that same level of service can be split among a greater household. This will help in the township's covering of the cost. As of right now, we're actually running at a loss on the township's behalf in order to subsidize this pilot, which was based on the fact that it's something the township found very important and valuable to the community to invest in sustainability wise. But in terms for the pilot itself to be sustainable, we'll need to bring in some additional funding over time, because if it's to grow, there's not really a way to keep funding it over time without more money going into it. So the increase to 70 pilot participants is our first recommendation. Based off of that, this number of toters that we were using for compost previously costs roughly $5,640 over 6 months. So this comes out to about $13.42 a month for each of 70 participating households. So that would be the cost just for that service based off of the increased number of participants. Further, we were able to determine based off of the average hourly wage of DPW employees that maintaining the compost drop-off site at the DPW costs roughly $3,522 over a 6-month period. So this includes half of the time that's spent on those Saturday drop-offs where it was compost drop-off in addition to recycling, and then also just general cleanup around the area and maintaining it to ensure there's no odors or vermin or anything during the week. So that comes out to about $8.38 a month amongst 70 participating households. So total, it's determined that the monthly cost of the pilot is around $21.80 between DPW costs and between the cost of the pilot or the composting service. However, we don't want to increase necessarily that drastic of an amount. So before, sorry, just apologies for that. My dog has a squeaky toy in the background. It's a bit distracting. So she's getting that taken away. So previously, the cost of the program came out to roughly $9.17 a month, and we didn't want to overwhelm any participants by over doubling that cost. That said, while we want to maintain a value for residents that are participating in the pilot, we want to encourage sustainability. We do still need to take that financial sustainability on behalf of the township into account. And so the main way to do this was to address the costs that go out of the township's budget towards Java composting, and accept that the township is going to provide that subsidy in terms of labor on the DPW side of things, more so than the financial subsidy that they did previously. So for this reason, we are recommending that the monthly cost moving forward be increased to $14 a month to cover just a tiny bit of that DPW cost, but primarily the cost of Java's hauling services. And because this will be processed online, there is a transaction fee involved. So we want to offer the option for residents to either pay quarterly to decrease that transaction fee so they're not paying that every month, or to pay monthly so that they don't have that higher compost price up front. Because where we felt folks might start to struggle is when they're seeing the $14 a month, that might seem reasonable, but trying to fit that $42 in every 3 months, trying to budget for that might be a little more of a strain on folks financially. So that's something that we want to provide that flexibility for people who are looking more for upfront savings versus overall affordability. And the last recommendation that we have for the pilot moving forward is that it actually remain where it is currently located at DPW headquarters. We did receive some requests for different hours or perhaps a more central location. However, based on participants, they're all over town. So the central locations that were suggested weren't necessarily able to accommodate everyone that's already participating. As of right now, we think that because the toters are already there in their current capacity, it makes sense to maintain them. And then if we look to expand in the future or to spread out into multiple smaller drop-off locations or any sort of combination of those, that's something that we need more time to examine, especially as we'll need to consider how the summer months and the warmer weather will impact the environment surrounding the composting and will impact our township's ability to manage any odors, any vermin, keep it organized, and then also seeing how those additional 20 families impact that station itself and seeing what the best number is, what the best storage solution is. So maintaining it as is now, with keeping in mind that we'll probably need to come back and reevaluate it later, is the recommendation for location. And then one last thing that I realized I skimmed over with regards to price is that during the initial pilot, we provided materials to all participating families at a cost of about $15 a household. Some households found the materials really helpful. Others thought they were great to start and then ended up going in another direction, and others didn't think they needed them at all. So our recommendation for that would be to provide them and make sure that they are available, accessible, and affordable through the township's program, but not necessarily something that the township purchases and distributes ourselves. So that way it best fits people's individual needs, and that also helps cut back on the cost of the program and helps maintain its sustainability long-term.
So Assistant Administrator, thanks for walking us through that. You had also provided us previously a very comprehensive report on this. So in summary, the recommendation is go from 50 to 70 participants, same location, no need to give them a starter kit unless they want to purchase one. And what's the charge, the monthly charge?
So the monthly charge is increasing from $9.22 to $14.
Terrific.
I move it all.
Yep, I do too. Do we need, Mr. Desideri, do we need an official roll call on this?
Yes, because then we'll have it by motion.
Terrific. So Mr. DeLuca moved it, I seconded it. Can we get a roll call?
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Ms. Gripe?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor Daffis?
Yes. And thank you again, Assistant Administrator Barnett. Did you have any other updates on any other items?
Those are the only updates I have for tonight, I believe. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to Township Attorney Desiderio.
Mayor, for reasons I don't know, my camera is not working. Ms. Barnett suggested that I disconnect and reconnect, and I did that 3 times and it has not worked. So I apologize. And I really believe in my heart that Mr. McGehee put the jinx on me, because I actually have a report tonight. So I think he put as we say in Italian, he put the malocchio on you. Okay, so whatever. All right, 2 things. The Cannabis Review Committee met yesterday. All the members of the committee were there, and they did an evaluation on 2 of the license applications that were deemed complete as of, I guess, Friday. I know there are more in the works, and Ms. Fritzen probably will report that there was another one that was received today. They did an independent review of those applicants and did a scoring matrix, which we will provide to you for the April 5th meeting. I thought we might have it today, but we do not. So we will have that for you. And as I understand it, those 2 that are deemed complete will be invited to attend the April 5th meeting for review by the Township Committee to make a determination as to whether or not they are authorized to proceed. That's what I have on that. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
Mr. Desiderio, by the way, you're looking really dapper.
That's the best I've looked. I understand.
Yeah, you're looking good tonight.
Thank Mr. McGehee.
So we're going to have this hearing similar to an ABC hearing. It's going to be at the end of a Township Committee meeting. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And Ms. Fritzen will send out invitations to these?
Yeah, Ms. Fritzen, and I assume with Ms. De Palma, who's acting as the chair of the Cannabis Committee, yes.
Thank you.
And you do not, if I am correct, you do not, as of right now, have those applications. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so we will also make sure that you have the applications for the meeting as well.
Thank you, Mr. Desiderio.
And I have one more thing if there are no other questions. Over the course of the last 2 meetings, we've had some discussion. The Township Committee has had some discussions with regard to a potential cannabis applicant and its location in connection with a distance from another cannabis location. the Apothecarium, which is presently licensed as a medical dispensary. And the issue came up, the owner of that property spoke to the Township Committee at the last meeting. Based on some discussion, it's my understanding that the Township Committee is willing to entertain a modification of the ordinance. Right now, the ordinance says that they can't be within 1,000 feet of each other. And I understand that there's at least a consensus to move forward with me drafting an ordinance to reduce that to 500 feet and reduce the distance from a church from 250 feet to 200 feet, and also to correct what may have been a mistake in not including the highway business zone. So I'm just reporting that, and unless I'm told otherwise, I will move forward with drafting those ordinances for the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Desiderio. Any questions or discussion about that? Okay, thank you.
That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. McGee.
Township Clerk Fritzen.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few things. Just to follow up what Mr. Desiderio reported. Yes, we did receive the fifth cannabis license application this morning. And I continue to report to the Township Committee who those applicants are and that they have qualified as far as supplying the documentation and their check. So mother item is to report that just this evening, our ballot box has been installed in front of the Hilton Branch Library. I had discussed with the Township Committee the need that it be moved from in front of the police and court building, and the location that we all agreed upon was successfully accepted by the county. So that was just moved around dinner time tonight. There'll be an event planning meeting on Friday morning for Mayfest. Mayfest is coming back, which is really terrific news. So as with any large scale event, we have our departments and the organizers meet just to go over their needs and expectations and what the township can provide. And my final item is just to report that I anticipate having the ABC hearing at the following conclusion of our Township Committee meeting on April 5th. Which I originally thought would be tonight, but there's been some changes in representation of the applicant. So right now it's April 5th.
Actually, Ms. Fritzen, and this is my fault. I think there was a request that we might move that to April the 19th in light of the two cannabis application hearings. Is that right? That's my understanding. Okay, so we're gonna say that we're gonna tell the applicant we're gonna move it to April the 19th
Fine with me.
on the ABC.
Okay, I'll let them know.
Thank you, Township Clerk Fritzen. Any questions for our Township Clerk? I'm excited about Mayfest. Yay. One of my favorite events. So I'm excited that it's coming back this year. All the events are back this year. Okay, this brings us to reports from elected officials, and we'll start with Deputy Mayor DeLuca.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to put something up. So Tuesday night, the 22nd, we're going to have a Zoom public meeting at 7 p.m. and we'll have our architects and engineers on to talk about the new design of the library to make it resistant to floods, and by putting our mechanicals on the top. And they'll also be talking about the design of the building, the flow, what's going to be happening there, the environmental sustainability features. So it'll be a really good presentation for folks to learn about what we want to do. And that's, again, Tuesday, the 22nd at 7 p.m. You have to register with the library. So you can go on the library's website and register for that. I had sent around a note asking if we wanted to do a resolution on April 5th for Arab American Heritage Month, and just wanted to Get thumbs up for that? We good? Okay. So I'll work with Ms. with Ms. Davenport, with Ms. Fritzen on preparing that for the 5th. Wanted to give you an update on our Engineering, Public Works and Planning Committee. We met on the 9th. Just a little bit more color to that resolution 9422, which is the Duck Pond Bridge and Memorial Park. The bid tonight, we're going to award a contract for $201,800 for that work. It's a fairly extensive job. We're bringing it up, obviously, to modern day standards, but making it historic at the same time. The work is to start hopefully in late April. It takes about a month to get everything together, and it will take 6 months, so 180 days. So we're talking somewhere around Halloween that the bridge will be open. So it'll be out of commission for all that time. And but at the end, we'll have a new bridge there, a new old bridge, a new historic bridge. I know we're going to talk about Tuscan Road, Burnett, but I wanted to report that we had an extensive conversation. We did a field visit there. I did that with our engineering staff and our consultants from our traffic consultant. The things we're looking at is installing a stop sign on Burnett just before the intersection as you come north towards Springfield, making Tuscan a one-way, moving the crosswalk at the bottom of Tuscan at the corner of the intersection with Boyden from the south side of the street to the north side of the street, which will allow for greater sight visibility as you come up the hill on Boyden from the Newark Way area. Right now, you come up there, there's 2 enormous trees that are there, and we don't want to lose them. And then you have the crosswalk. So by moving it about 30, 40 feet north, we'll have that much more distance to see. And we're creating a bump out there so that it can make it a safer crossing. And then we're also talking about widening the left turn lane at Boyden and Springfield. Right now, it's a very narrow, short lane, and you can only get a couple cars in there. If we can add a couple more, that will allow the traffic to move faster on Boyden. And lastly, we're going to suggest some changes to Seth Boyden School with that drop-off area in the front, maybe looking at some other possibilities of connecting a drop-off lane through Henry Place. So there's some work to do there at the school, which we want to have a conversation with. Also with the Engineering Public Works, we discussed the issue of sub pumps and the discharging of sub pumps onto our streets, some of which cause really significant problems with flooding and icing in the winter. So we have a draft ordinance that we're going to be kicking around one more time at our April meeting. And then on April 19th, we'll come back here at the Township Committee for a discussion item about some changes with our sub pump. And then lastly, I just want to, and Mr. Jimes touched on this a bit, FEMA. We've been talking to FEMA at least once a week, every week for the last over a month. And we've got a lot of projects to put through. Today, we had a very productive conversation with FEMA about the potential of getting some mitigation money. Now, of course, we've been talking to them about damage money that from Ida, that we, our property that was damaged, parks and buildings and bridges. In fact, the FEMA bridge, the Duck Pond Bridge will be a FEMA submission. But in addition to getting support for our loss, there's a mitigation factor that you can get some reimbursement for steps you take to prevent future damage and future flooding. So we had a big discussion about the library. We brought architects and engineers on the call today, and we're looking to see if we can get some money because we're moving the mechanicals to the roof and to the first floor. So that's something that we're going to continue to pursue. And that's it for now. That's my report. Thank you.
That's a lot. And thank you. Especially, I know we've all been trying to get that FEMA money and get those projects through there. So I appreciate your efforts on that. Committee member Adams.
Yes, thank you. Just a few things. We talked about a couple things at code, one of which is on for discussion tonight with regard to the leaf blower. Also, we're talking about and going to be discussing recommendations to bring to this committee with regard to our plans moving forward with parklets, or more accurately, streeteries. Streeteries are when restaurants are using the street for tables and eating. So eatery, streetery, that's where it comes from. So we do need design standards for that, and actually just rules and regulations with regard to those, and of course for this committee to decide, opine on, and decide if we're going to continue them going into 2023. And if that's the case, then we need some guidelines and regulations for our administration clerk's office to administer, and with weigh-in from relevant departments. And because it's on the street, it'll include police, fire, engineering, and code for anything that's actually built, construction code officials. So we're working on that at code. Also, just to add to Mr. DeLuca's comment on the Duck Pond Bridge, since I've been in for the last couple years, I just want to let everyone know in the public that while this was damaged in Ida, just as we've had just done the Civic House Bridge historic reconstruction, we've been working for the last 2-3 years on plans for reconstructing and rehabilitating all of our bridges to bring them up to current standards, current code, but more importantly, to do them in such a way that is approved by the State Historic Preservation Office, and to keep them in line with historic preservation standards for the park, which is on the historic register. So there, and also to add to Mr. DeLuca's, the DEP requires us not to do any work over the waterway from Memorial Day to Labor Day. So that's one of the reasons that the amount of time it'll take to reopen that bridge will be longer than most people might think. So everybody is, why is it going to take so long? There are restrictions. We cannot work over the waterway over and above DEP's regulations during certain times. So there's a lot of wheels going at the same time, and a lot of work done by many different groups. I want to thank the Historic Preservation Commission, and Memorial Park Conservancy, and our engineering department and our consultant, because we had hours and hours of meetings about the slightest details on those bridges, all 3 bridges. And grateful to Open Space Trust Fund for allowing some funding for doing that. So it's a bigger project than it seems when you look at it, but and respectfully, I'd ask the public to leave the barricades in place and stop taking them down. Before you know it, we're going to have to construct like concrete closures because people just keep taking them down. It's not safe to cross them, and we ask that you just respect that and walk on the library bridge if you can. Also, regarding historic preservation, our Historic Preservation Commission has worked hard and been waiting for the state to approve Maplewood Village as a designated historic place. So the state finally approved that. It still has to go before the National Park Service with regard to the National Trust for Historic Preservation's calling it a national historic place and being on the historic register. So that news should be coming in the next couple months, and hopefully we'll be able to have like a nice announcement and an unveiling of some designation there. And also for my township committee members at the code committee, we did discuss the UCC fees that we talked about at the last TC meeting. Yeah, it was the last TC meeting, and bottom line is that we cannot raise those fees. So that's a non-starter for a lot of legal reasons. And but basically the answer is no, we can't raise those fees. I don't think we need to go into all the details for that. So, and lastly, I just want to remind people that if I can, I don't even know where I have so many things open on my window. I don't know if I can do it. So I was going to just share, it is still Women's History Month, and we do have more events slated for the rest of this month. And that includes a Julia Child documentary on Friday evening at the Woodland. I attended Sojourner Truth, who was someone I didn't know that much about, but who had a great influence in basically women's rights, fighting for women's rights and the rights of, so I don't know if you can see this, the rights of our all women and people of color, and back in the 1700s. And it was a really interesting one woman show who, and just was a lot of information that I didn't know. The NAACP of the Oranges in Maplewood is doing a women's health forum tomorrow night at 7 p.m. and it's virtual. The Hilton Neighborhood Association is doing the history of the Women's Club of Maplewood on Thursday. And that's, both of those are by Zoom, so you can join. There's the Julia Child documentary, which I'm going to squeeze in between March Madness basketball games, and just a lot more to go through. So go to somawomen.org and you can find out all the events. But it's been, lastly, the Wear White for Women movie night is Sunday, March 27th. At SOPAC. So at 3 p.m. we asked men and women alike to show up to Wear White for Women and just basically do our big photo, which we always like to do every year, and we haven't really been able to do it, obviously. So, and that will be also a movie which will start after that, Bend It Like Beckham. So we recommend all kids come out with their parents. There'll be snacks and fun, and we usually have everybody bring a sleeping bag and up in SOPAC loft, and everybody just chills out and watches the movie together. And it's a lot of fun. It's a low key event. So thanks everybody. That's my report.
Thank you, Committee Member Adams. Committee Member McGehee.
Thank you, Mayor Jaffis. And first and foremost, for Ms. Adams to say she's going to actually go to this event during March Madness, that's a big deal, just for you. So don't know. So that's serious business. And on a serious business note, I also want to recognize what Ms. Adams said, that yes, we're always looking to find ways to raise revenue for our township. And the code committee, we did a due diligence and deep dive into those funds and those fees. And as she articulated, is something that we cannot touch. But we did do the work to try to find more ways to drive revenue for the community. All right, I'll move on to my report here. And I want to make sure that we're fully represented here. So I have a few items that I want to
wow, now he does look dapper. That's funny.
So first I want to really touch on our Youth Advisory Committee. I want to recognize the great job by Justin and Esther, who are our standing and remaining members. With COVID, we lost a lot of our members of the Youth Advisory Committee. So last week we had a recruitment meeting, addressing questions about the program and the expectations that a young person in our community can expect if they're part of the program. And we really pushed, really three core goals: that, the committee is about increasing youth involvement in township committee affairs and local public policy, the communication between teen social activism, committees, groups, and the township. And then also that the committee, which used to meet at Starbucks on a monthly basis and do other events and worked on many initiatives, that it's a welcoming environment. And so again, I want to recognize there were about 20 plus young people on the call. It was great, well attended. There were questions that were asked. I know that Justin and Esther collected those email addresses, and we'll be following up with the hopes that we'll be able to fully recruit some of those individuals who expressed an interest to be part of our committee, and we'll get rocking and rolling in the months ahead. The second committee I want to talk about, and this is based on my notes, is public safety. From an operational perspective, February overtime for dollars and hours for fire are at the lowest level since July of 21. And the police continue to perform well in terms of posting year-over-year positive stats of overtime, as well as costs for hours, and as well as overtime dollars and overtime hours. So it's a good story in terms of an operational perspective. I also want to recognize that the enhancements to our communications are in full swing, leveraging Nexo alerts as well as public statements. We'll continue to enhance that, but this is something that we've taken on, and I think we've made some great initial steps. From a shared service perspective, that's a later discussion item, so I'll table that for now. And then also shifting back to police, some of the issues we've kind of highlighted already. There's some crime trends, there are auto trends, there's robbery, there is issues like this happening not just in our township, but also in Essex County, state of New Jersey, and frankly, the country. So we're cognizant of that and looking for ways to address that. And also mental health is a big part of it. For those who are following the news, some of the issues that are happening in New York City with shootings of homeless people and things like that, there's a direct correlation between mental health and the pandemic. And it's not, is something that we as a community also have to recognize as well. And then safety issues. We talked about, obviously, the school area crossings. I wanted to recognize one of our residents who was on the public safety meeting, who wanted to have a deeper conversation about certain crossing intersections, and the one we'll be talking about later on this evening, Springfield, Burnett, and Tuscan. And Mr. Lucas already articulated some of the things on the engineering, public safety, public works side, and we'll talk more about public safety in that discussion. And then finally, I also want to touch on the musical, the Columbia High School musical. And I want to thank the hundreds of students and faculty, staff, administrators, and parents for their tireless effort on Newsies. This is the first time that we've had live theater in 2 years in the Township Maplewood. And I went to the show on opening night, and it is phenomenal. And it was good to see live theater again. And as we all know, everyone says our shows are just like Broadway. And just like Broadway, sometimes there are changes and cancellations due to COVID. So the last 3 shows will now be March 25th through 27th. And those holding those tickets, they'll be transferred to those same days on that weekend. So please, as the leadership has communicated to me, keep an eye out for an email from CHA's musical for more info in the weeks to come. And then finally, shifting back, I want to just say, I know there's more to come, but behind me are the old stairs of the front of our building. These are now been completely done. We have a new walkway. It's beautiful. There still needs to be some railings installed, but the work is beautiful. We're also going to do recognition to former Mayor Jerry Ryan, and a plaque there as well. But when you drive by, if you're wondering what's happening, you're driving down Valley, you don't see these old decrepit gray steps. Now you see beautiful, well-carved work. And I'm sure that the mayor will communicate when we'll be doing our dedication for the steps, and also adding a little bit of grass to the sides where we had to do some work. And with that, that's my report. I yield the floor back to you, Mayor.
Thank you, Committee Member McGehee. Great report. And we have some other surprises when we unveil the new Jerry Ryan Plaza. More on that to come, right? Excited about all of those things. And I can't wait to see the musical. And I think it's been rescheduled because of the COVID outbreak. I was supposed to go Saturday night, so I'm bummed about that, but hopefully we'll get to see it. We have members in our own community, Maplewoodians, who worked on the original show on Broadway and in regional theater. And they've seen the show and they were delighted with the production. We just have such incredible talent, our teachers, our musicians, and our students, and it's great that we're back to live everything. Right? Community events and shows. So that's really exciting. With that, we're going to move over to a Committee Member Kripe.
I am kicking myself for not going on Friday when I had tickets. I moved them till next week. So, 2 weeks from now, whatever. But I'm looking forward to the musical. And yes, I'm extremely happy that they have had so much success. I heard back from the Seniors Advisory Committee in regards to the dress rehearsal performances, and they gave rave reviews. So that the seniors loved it, and they're so grateful for the opportunity to be able to see it at a price point free that they appreciate. Our really only meeting that we had this month between our last meeting has been Seniors Advisory, and they have a few things of concern that I wanted to share with the Township Committee. In particular, we recently got our quarterly waste management bills and discovered that there are an additional almost $20 in random fees that have been added to our members who get printed bills. So they're actually charging our seniors and anyone else who may not have computer access $8.50 for a printed copy of their bill, which seems a little, So I will be reaching out to those guys to figure out what's going on and why this is happening, or if it maybe is a part of some other fee that hasn't been well explained on those printed bills. Dean, thank you for bringing up the memorial, because for Older Americans Month in May, Mayor Dafis, we are looking at trying to have a bench possibly or something done in the recognizing Nan Salmons for the work that she's done. Organization that helps with transportation has actually been named in her honor, and we're hoping to do something like that for her as well. And potentially for those we've lost due to COVID, that was brought up by them as well. So if it's not something like benches, possibly flower boxes in and around the community, that would be kept in their honor. One concern that a lot of the seniors were having after the storm was access to the train station. They understand that South Orange is basically the only viable option if you have mobility issues, but even getting on and off the trains in those spaces seem to be difficult. And unfortunately, New Jersey Transit isn't allowed, I guess, to assist people on and off the train, which makes it really difficult, particularly if you've got hip joint and muscular difficulties. Climbing those steps is severe. I don't have any of those, but even for me, I've got to use both railings to get up on and off those trains sometimes. So that's a concern, particularly with the New York City opening back up and more seniors wanting to have access to its sights and sounds. Seton Hall has gotten approval for use of Memorial's great room for the technology classes for seniors. We just need to get the insurance certificate, so I'll be reaching out to Jerry and Bailey for that a little later. We'd like to get that up and going by May. And finally, in the consent agenda, the Pool Advisory Committee was able to, with the help of Mr. Terry Willard, woohoo, VP Willard over at CHS, get a list of the enrollment numbers, the accurate ones for as of March. So we are now able to assess the pool party fees for the schools. And they are lower, which should make people happier, but at the same time, it's not it's not free, and it's not the $500 flat fee, which some folks were really pushing for. But pool parties can happen, and we're looking forward to all of that going on. Melissa is unfortunately not with us tonight, but she wanted to also stress that there are applications online as well as links to print applications for the Recs community for camps, for the pool, and for building maintenance, for our building attendance for our various locations. So there's opportunities for people who are looking for part-time work, including our youth, our teens, to make a little money this summer. So that is it for me. Thank you for this time, Mayor Dafis.
Thank you, Committee Member Kripe. Nice work with our seniors in particular. I'll be reporting on some updates in legislation that relate to our seniors, will be music to our seniors' ears momentarily. And I was wondering, I wanted to ask you one follow-up question, where we are, if anywhere, with respect to the pedestrian audit that I know our seniors wanted to do and get up and running, especially during the month of May, during Older Adults Month.
Candace is working on a map for our seniors so that they will be able to go through areas of town, do some more exercise and activities outside, the kind of an idea of use what you have available, so that our folks will be able to get out, and we'll be seeking input from them afterwards for our reports on how walkable our township really is.
That's great. Thank you for that. And we can make it a community event and invite all. We can have like 1 mile walks or a couple blocks walks, or we can have events and bring people out and enjoy the nicer weather, the longer days, and focus on pedestrian safety as well at the same time. So my report is going to start with a shout out to the Kiwanis Club of South Orange and Maplewood. They are most generously doing a major food distribution event on Saturday, this upcoming Saturday, March 19th, between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. at the Maplewood Pool parking lot. Please come on by and help us if you want to volunteer, and please spread the word. I'll be spreading the word on social media, and help us do the same. No questions asked. Pull up, receive your box, move on. If you can register ahead of time, kiwanishelps.org and register under Maplewood would be really helpful, so they have an idea of the need. But they're ready to rock and roll, and they're ready to serve a lot of people with food boxes, free food boxes on Saturday. And we're really grateful to them. And as some of you know, they are one of our partners in keeping our community fridge stocked up. So, incredible generosity, and we want to all go out there and support them on Saturday. I have some news from the Maplewood Village Alliance. We have a new president, Amy Howlett, local businesswoman. Amy Howlett will be stepping into the very big shoes of John James. Mr. James will remain on the board during the transition period because of his, vast institutional knowledge. And we're really excited for Amy to move us forward. To move the board forward. Amy has been incredibly active in helping us reshape our bylaws and helping us do a lot of new and exciting things that I've reported about that the MVA is working on. Also, our traffic consultants redesign concept of the Village Center parking lot was very well received by the MVA at our board meeting on Monday night. It was, universally accepted. And so the next step is to move that forward on our end. Obviously, this will be one of the capital projects that we discuss on Saturday during our workshop, our budget workshop. The MVA also took an official vote on Monday night, and they are officially requesting our support for the return of summer streets. This is something that we decided to do in conjunction with our outdoor dining that remains in effect through the end of the year. This is where we close down Maplewood Avenue Thursday evening through Saturday from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. each night, and allows for people to congregate. It promotes pedestrians. It promotes, and we do a lot of music fests, and hopefully we'll do some more activities to promote people to come out and walk about and not drive, walk more. So I'm going to be asking for your support. Do we have a unanimous support for the return of summer streets? Yes? Cool. Excellent. I'll let them know about that. Moving on to the Governor Murphy's unveiling of the state of New Jersey's budget for 2022-2023, a whopping $48.9 billion with a B dollars. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what it means for Maplewood. There's a lot of details we don't know just yet, but we know a few details, and I wanted to report on those this evening. In terms of school aid, $650 million is going toward the continuing funding of the school formula for Maplewood, for South Orange Maplewood School District. That's about $8,287,000 or so, a 15% increase from the last budget. And overall, historically, during Governor Murphy's tenure, an 82.2% increase in school aid, Why is that important to our taxpayers out there? Because 57 cents of every taxpayer dollar goes to the school district. So the more aid that the school district gets, the better, the more property tax relief all of us experience. And speaking of, our state aid is pretty flat at about $1.8 million. And speaking of property taxes are a big deal everywhere in Trenton. Everyone is talking about property tax relief. Maplewood currently ranks 27th in high property taxes in the state of New Jersey, at an average of $16,632. That's a whopping number, right? And any help that we can get to provide some property tax relief that the state is working on that really impacts us locally is really important. Of course, we continue to work with our federal representatives, including our new representative, Congresswoman Cheryl, for the repeal of the SALT tax deduction cap that the Trump administration put into place. And they're still working on that in Congress. But here in the state of New Jersey, we have a couple of interesting things happening that the governor mentioned as part of his budget speech on Tuesday of this week. One of the things that relate to property is the, hang on a minute, I had this stuff all together here so there wouldn't be a break. Yes, the New Jersey, the Affordable New Jersey Communities for Homeowners and Renters Tax Relief Program. This is basically now a kind of a redesign of the previous homestead tax, property tax credit program that we were familiar with. And it has expanded eligibility. Homeowners with incomes up to $250,000 will qualify for state average relief, being in the neighborhood of at least $700. And renters with incomes up to $100,000 will also be eligible for direct relief to offset rent increases. More money was put into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Fortunately, here in Maplewood, we are up to date with our affordable housing credits through our settlement with Fair Share Housing, which is good until 2025, when we have to start that process all over again and evolve. And there is some legislation moving forward that has the governor's support, which will further provide much necessary property tax relief. One of those bills would restore the consolidated municipal property tax aid and the energy tax receipts property tax relief. That's really a lot of money right there. I asked our CFO to look at how much money we have lost since about 2008, when the energy tax receipts were no longer coming back to us. They were allowed to be used by the state to help make its budget work every year, and it's in the neighborhood of $21 million. And it would mean about $2 million annually that would come back to us. And when you think about what we're looking at in terms of a deficit this year and where our tax levy might end up in personnel decisions, $2 million is a significant amount of money and will provide significant property tax relief to our residents. So we look forward to that. Another important legislation that relates to property tax relief is something that was considered previously a while back and is now back into consideration. And this would provide seniors who volunteer a property tax credit. And we're following that legislation very closely. and committee member Kreitby to get our seniors involved in advocacy and in support of this legislation. And I'll forward along some information for you to take that on if you don't mind. In terms of affordable housing, believe it or not, the ADUs are moving forward statewide. And of course, we and South Orange and Princeton have been in the forefront, and legislators are looking at us as model ordinances to create a state model ordinance. The bill that is moving through the initial committees right now does have an opt-out provision, which I'm personally not happy with, but that's how compromises are made to move legislation forward. So the opt-out provision seems to have survived the first few hearings. And there's even some talk of COA credits for ADUs of a certain size. And again, like I said, I was asked to testify before one of the committees, along with some of our colleagues from Princeton, in support of the current legislation and to provide our comments about ways that the legislation can improve. And that'll cause us to also re-examine ours and to talk a little bit more deeply about where are we seeing ADUs in our community? Who is taking them on? And if they've considered them, why didn't they follow through? We know that economics is part of the issue, and having a statewide ordinance that includes some state incentives for property owners to go the ADU route officially will really help move ADUs forward in our community and other communities. And of course, ADUs will be part of our discussion in our master plan. And I'm excited to report, as some of you already know, that we have a signed contract with our planner. And so our planning board chair will be moving that forward and beginning to schedule the first engagement meetings, which will produce a fulsome stakeholder community-wide set of meetings that will go through the rest of this year and well into next year. So we're excited to move our master plan forward. And then last but not least, as already reported this evening, we do have our third budget workshop on Saturday, March 19th, beginning at 3 p.m. on Zoom right here. It's been publicly noticed. Join us. That is where we will make our final decisions, capital and personnel, and look at our revised operating expenses, and hopefully, do whatever we can to lessen the pain of any property tax, of any tax levy hike. Right now, without that budget workshop, without making any decisions yet, without shaving down some things and prioritizing a little bit more, we're looking at about a $1.3 million tax levy, which would bring us to about a 3.9% increase. So hopefully we can shave that a little bit more after Saturday, but that is definitely better news than what we had to do last year. So we're coming out of COVID. It's happening, and next year will be even better. And that's something, again, that we will talk about on Saturday. When we talk about health and wellness with respect to our budgets, it's not just myopically what's happening now, but how do our decisions for this budget affect our budget for next year and the year beyond that and the year after that? So that is my report. This brings us to our discussion items. And we're going to start with committee member Adams, hopefully bringing home the issue of gas.
Okay. Don't lower your expectations for just a second.
Let's do it.
So, well, in keeping with what you said, Mayor, about our being a leader, that the state is following us. They followed us on our plastic bags. They're following us on our ADU. And they're actually looks like they're paying close attention to us with regard to our leaf blower restrictions. So we're proposing a change to our existing leaf blower ordinance to change from a seasonal restriction of their use to a year-round restriction. After 6 years of experience, our studies, participation, at least for me and others in seminars. I've been both an attendee, including 2 hours earlier today about the effects of noise on our health and on our society. And as an attendee, aside from a panelist, I've learned a lot about why we need to get this under control. And as you also said, so we can be done talking about this issue. I can't guarantee that, because I wouldn't be surprised if, down the road, we start talking about, like, California is getting some control on all fossil fuel based landscaping equipment being phased out. And just as, gas powered vehicles are being phased out, even by our own companies. So, but for now, this particular piece of equipment is specifically dangerous to the public health and arguably not necessary for lawn care, other than for speed with which companies can get on and off a customer's property. So this is a bottom line is a public health issue. I've spoken with Health Officer Davenport and asked her to give this committee a report at the next Board of Health meeting with her thoughts and recommendations with regard to our restrictions and with regard to gas-powered leaf blowers, their effects on the health and of the community, of the workers who use them. So we know the dangers of these pieces of equipment with the particulate matter they blow around at hurricane force speeds, the breathing in of that matter by anyone in the vicinity, by the workers especially. We know that the workers also are damaging their hearing, and with breathing in the 30% fuel and oil mix that gets released and breathed in by them, unburned, is cancer causing. So we're basically asking that we begin a restriction of a year-round use of this piece of equipment, and ask our contractors and our residents to do better and to use greener equipment. So to that end, we talked about it at our code committee. We've asked our code enforcement team what they would prefer, if they would prefer phasing it out by going to a model like a couple other municipalities like Montclair, where they have a longer restriction of the use, but they still allow it. The preference of our Department of Community Development, which includes code enforcement, is that we don't muddy the waters by doing that, that we don't phase it in, that we go straight to an annual ban year round. And so it would be easier for them to enforce. It'd be less confusing to the public, less confusing to the contractors. And let's be clear also that we know that the contractors, they see the writing on the wall on this on a national scale. California is going to be stopping the sale of all landscaping equipment that's fueled by gas beginning in 2024. And being on the forefront of this is important, because that's what we do as elected leaders. Our job is to protect the public health, and we do that. That's what we do when we mandated masks during the pandemic. That's what we did when we mandated vaccines for all of our township employees. And that's what a former TC did when they set up business practices and they restricted painting companies from sanding houses without encapsulating that house with tarp, so that it didn't get exposed, out in the air for everybody to breathe, because that was in the interest of public safety. And this public health issue, I think, is really important, and we need to lead other communities. The more we do, the more likely the state will do it, the more likely other communities will follow suit, and we can protect the workers, our residents, from just this really unnecessary and unhealthy piece of equipment from being used. So that's why we put it on for discussion, and I leave it to, happy to discuss. Or you can all just say, yeah, let's do it. That would be cool.
What is the proposal? Is there a proposal?
Well, the proposal is to basically ban the use or not allow this piece of equipment to be used in Maplewood beginning January of 2023. And just one thing I forgot about, Mr. Desiderio, Mr. Palma, and I have met numerous times with Maplewood Country Club to talk about their unique situation with regard to having to maintain property, so perfect like a golf course, manicured, more so than residents need to necessarily. But we've talked to them, and one of the changes to our ordinance that we're recommending also is to allow one specific piece of equipment for which there is no electric alternative, and that the country club specifically uses, and that's to allow the use of, it's called a buffalo blower. I don't think there's any other name for it, but it's basically a large blower that's four-stroke engine, by the way, and it goes toward the ground. It's attached to either a small tractor or a golf cart, and used while they're blowing the grass while they're mowing, so that they can have it as golf club quality. But that's the only other, that and the restriction. They're aware of the restriction for gas-powered leaf blowers year-round, and they've already been equipping themselves with electric or battery-operated blowers for their own property. So, sorry, I know that was a longer answer to your question, but that was just.
So I think that if we're talking about banning starting January 2023, I'm absolutely in favor of it. I think it gives sufficient time to let residents and landscapers know what's happening, and it's I'm all in favor of it.
Cool. Also, I just wanted to add, I've been talking to people in Princeton, and they have, I've committed to work with the Environmental Advisory Committee or members of that and the Green Team to look at ways we can help some of the smaller businesses, like 10 employees or less or whatever, and we've been connected with somebody at Home Depot to try to do a buyback thing. So we want to be proactive in that, and we want because we understand that I also understand there's going to be an ultimate savings for the businesses who transition. But initially it's a bit of a jolt for an expense to substitute equipment. But also, so we want the Green Team and the Environmental Advisory Committee to work together to, and I'm sure volunteers from Quiet Maplewood would help to educate the public of standards of lawn care for their own properties, and maybe looking at some better practices, better for their properties, but also kind of like maybe take a societal switch to what the norm is or what's expected. So there's a lot going on with this, with the education component that we want to keep working on, and also sort of buyback or some sort of financial give back that we can give to some people to help make it easier.
So if I may, so I'm a yes on this. I sit on the code with Nancy, and I also sit on the Green Team, and we've spoken about this, not the last Green Team meeting, but other Green Team meetings. And what I communicated for me was one of the pieces I wanted some data, and I wanted to hear from the individuals. We can pass ordinances all day, but who is going to enforce and do the operations behind what we do? And I wanted to hear from Annette DePalma's team and code to understand exactly what they thought would be the best and most efficient way to operate our township. And as Ms. Adams articulated, they said it's better for us to have it straight, clean, and all, not nothing, no phased approach. And when I heard their feedback, because I really look at the experts when I do my assessment, I said that's the right direction. So I'm on board. I'd like to move this forward for January 1, 2023. And that's it. I appreciate the efforts by everyone on this. It's been a long time coming. And yes, by going ahead and moving forward with this, we will be the leader in our community and in our state. Thank you.
Committee Member Craig?
No, I'm in agreement. And also, I'm just thinking with, besides that education piece, something that, again, the seniors, because they're brilliant, have been proposing is having a cooperative kind of agreement with our university and high school students as a way of supporting our seniors who maybe can't get out into their yards and do the leaves or the grass and stuff. So it would be another way for our people to support their neighbors and give back. So I'm all for the January cutoff.
And no surprise to anyone, I'm also for this proposal. It's a public health issue. That's it. That's all it is. There's nothing confusing about this. And as Committee Member Adams stated, we've taken the lead in other public health ways, and this is another one of those ways. It is a public health important measure to take on. And with sufficient launch pad into the start of next year for education, and I really, really love the buyback program. That's very smart. And doing whatever we can to help people, who need the support to move this forward is really important. And we know that our landscapers, I mean, I've seen them, they now have access to this equipment, and this equipment is also accessible more readily than it was 3-4 years ago when we were entertaining this. It's accessible and it's cheaper than the gas powered ones. And there are various options and they do the same job. They really, really do. Yes, let's do it. That's it. No more belaboring this. Do we need a vote?
No, I think we'll have to bring the ordinance back.
Yep. Okay. Terrific.
So we'll work on that. I'll work on that with Mr. Desiderio.
Terrific.
I'm nodding my head in agreement.
I can see that.
I got you covered, Roger. Don't worry.
You gotta get one of those heads on a stick
We're
and
gonna
nod
have
it
to
for
have a
him.
little head thing.
Where did you get that picture, Mr. McGee?
I'm in the digital business. I know how to get everything.
Oh boy.
That looks like my wedding picture.
It's a good shot, right?
So, Mr. McGehee, will you lead us into the discussion of the fire services merger agreement?
I will, Mayor, and thank you so much. The purpose of this discussion item is to obtain your formal support of our fire services regional service agreement between Maplewood and South Orange. We're calling it South Essex Fire Department, SEFD. And I did provide the current negotiating document to all my colleagues. I will not be sharing it because it is a negotiation contract document. I will not be sharing my screen, but I know everyone's read it. And so essentially just to summarize, and first, before I even summarize what it is, I want to recognize my colleague, Mr. DeLuca, for all his hard effort on this, as well as Roger Desiderio, our township attorney, and our township administrator, Mr. Gimes. The four of us have met on numerous occasions this year, and also as soon as Jerry started, really, in terms of getting this to where it is today. And the document, as you've read, really talks about key points about this agreement. It talks about the terms, the 10-year term that we'll start off with. It talks about how services will be provided. We're going to provide services that are required by law. We're going to continue to do our EMS, or emergency medical services for Maplewood. We'll continue to do fire code inspections. It talks about the construct, of the committee, the 3 members, one from Maplewood, one from South Orange, and a third-party individual. It talks about the role of the chief executive officer, the CFO. In this case, this will be our South Orange Village administrator at this time, and how we will also work with the fire chief, who is going to administer and enforce all things related to the rules and disciplines of the department, delegate when necessary, and also provide us with monthly reports, just like our current fire chief and police chief do for public safety. Also, current, another good point too is that we're looking at costs. We talked about what the cost looks like. So we are looking at costs in terms of equalized assessed value, which currently is 55% for Maplewood and 45% for South Orange. We talk about capital costs, our 60-40 split. This is contingent on our apparatus that we currently have in our fire stations. And the whole agreement really looks at the financial, the operational, and of course, as Veronica, as Ms. Adams talked about, which I think is important, it talks about public health and also the interest of public safety. And this agreement does nothing less but enhance those attributes as well. So anyway, the floor is open for discussion. Actually, before that, let me yield the floor to my colleague, Mr. DeLuca, who may want to add some points as well.
I just want to know where the name came from. Because I've never, in 32 years living here, South Essex has never been a thing. I thought we were going with South Mountain. What happened?
Well, what I will say about this, and my colleagues will keep me honest, is that a lot of people are claiming that name at this time, saying that they came up with it. The other South Mountain name that we were looking at was too much like Smurf, like the Smurfs. So we were told by our respective fire departments and other key stakeholders that that name would not be ideal. So that's where we pivoted to South Essex.
And the other thing, Ms. Adam, was there was a suggestion that if other municipalities joined that were not part of the South Mountain area, that it wouldn't be appropriate for them.
Yep, and that's correct too. But we don't get ahead of ourselves. We're obviously keenly focused on Maplewood and South Orange at this time.
Right.
Okay. That's it for me, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. McGehee. And you have the next item as well.
Mr. McGehee, if I may, would you just, I think it would be appropriate for you to outline what the next procedures are so that your colleagues are aware of what's going to be coming.
100%. I appreciate that, Mr. Desiderio, for point of order. So what we'll do is at the next meeting, the April 5th meeting, is that there will be a resolution on the agenda basically moving this agreement. So at that time, you'll have a chance to formally vote up or down on moving forward with this agreement. Also, on the 28th of March, South Orange will be exercising the same action as well. Once that occurs, then that officially initiates the beginning of the agreement and the partnership. And so then the committee itself can start to have meetings and start to move forward other initiatives as well. We'll be working with the administrators regarding operations and some minor funding, which you need to run any administration. But really, April 5th is really the commencement of work that's been happening for several years.
Mr. McGehee, if I may, just a couple of other little points.
Please, Mr. Desiderio.
Assuming that that the Maplewood Township Committee and the South Orange Village Board of Trustees passes it, the resolutions and the agreement will then be signed and will be sent down to DCA for final review and approval, local government services. Simultaneously or shortly thereafter, the documents will be sent to the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State will then create the entity. Will create the South Essex Fire Department as a body politic of the state of New Jersey. That will create the entity, at which point in time the representative members from each municipality and the third member should then meet as part of that new organization and begin the transition so that for the July 1 target date that begins. And of course, there will have to be certain things that will be done incidental to that, but that's the general procedure as this should move forward. But April 5th will be the target date for the agreement.
And Ms. Fritzen, if we could have that resolution listed separately and not on the consent agenda.
Agreed.
Sure.
And just so everyone's aware that because South Orange has their meeting first on the 28th, this document will be released by them publicly on the 25th when they put their agenda out. So it'll be a work product until that time. We're going to be going back and forth and tightening up the language. But on the 25th, it will become a public document. So you all might get comments or you'll see stuff on social media.
That's correct. And the document that I shared with you on Saturday is as close as done in terms of where we are at this point. That's why I said it's the contract, it's under negotiation. But what you're seeing is the construct of what we've put together with South Orange.
Well, thank you all for that information. And we all look forward to moving this forward on the 5th, right? Officially by resolution. Thank you. Mr. McGehee, do you want to move into the third item on the discussion agenda?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Appreciate that. So the next item is really related to collaboration. And, we've recognized through the voices of our community an issue which Mr. Luca outlined from an engineering perspective at the intersection of Tuscan, Burnett, and Springfield. What we realize that there are certain cases in our community where, although we have amazing standing committees, there is an opportunity for a cross-functional hybrid meeting / forum where residents who are concerned about issues can meet with the key department heads who are affiliated with the respective committees, so that we can hear their voices collectively at the same time, and then share that information to come up with a roadmap strategy to address whatever concern that they may have. And in the case of this particular intersection related to the Seth Boyden School and other young people walking to school, not just Seth Boyden, but also walking to MMS and other schools as well, there's an opportunity for us to do an enhancement of how we work with our community in terms of letting their voice be heard, but also making sure that their voice is exposed to key stakeholders in the departments, not just the elected officials, who can advise us with their expertise to come up with solutions. So what I'm interested in doing is moving forward, including with this particular issue, although we've outlined some stuff here from engineering, I can tell you in public safety that the chief and team continue to look to hire new crossing guards, that they're doing training, they're going to be putting cones in key areas, just ways to do traffic calming mitigation to address this issue. And by the way, as the mayor mentioned, this is not the only intersection. I have 3 or 4 screens open here with other intersections in our community, such as Valley and Parker. And I think Ms. Kripe would be nodding if I could see her on that in regard. That intersection is just as bad, all due respect, as the intersection in question. So I think, there's an opportunity for us, and maybe this works for you, Mr. Gimes, to look at setting up at times public forums where we have certain synergies of committees, and we have, we can have the rule of 3 and publicly notice it, or have 2 of our 2 colleagues there, either myself and someone else, or 2 other colleagues there, so that the concerns of the community can be heard by the key people at the same time, and we can have that fluid conversation with the end goal of putting together a roadmap. As I was listening, because I couldn't attend the engineering meeting that morning, I had a work obligation, but listening to what Mr. Lucas said, I thought about that and creating a roadmap with what Chief Duvall and his team is doing. And then we have milestones with the end goal of addressing the issue. So that's the discussion point. It's open for discussion to see the purpose of it, to see if my colleagues agree we should move forward with having an occasional public forum where we invite residents with the concern issue, and we include stakeholders from across multiple departments to be there as well.
Any discussion?
Yeah, are you thinking in person or by Zoom?
Great question. I think for now, Zoom, but quickly into in person. I remember, pre-COVID, we would, have meetings with the public about one-way, making Maplewood Avenue one-way street or something like that, just to kind of some flashbacks there for you. But I think for now, Zoom and, or an option to do a hybrid, but any way that's most convenient for our residents.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think, we've had some of the, like, just for example, last week or so, we had the meeting on Porter Road and Field Road, which was a little more direct, but it gave people the opportunity. We were able to put stuff on the screen. People could talk about things. So yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think we should do it as a public, notice it publicly so all of us who want to attend can attend. The other thing I would just say is we need to script it as far as what we want our professionals to have there. So we know, so they don't get defensive and they have all the material and do all that kind of stuff.
I agree 100%.
And also our traffic engineer, who's very helpful with these kinds of conversations.
Agreed.
2 thumbs up on my end. Committee member, right?
I think it would be great. I just want to actually mention the fact if we do those meetings and we make an option for daytime as well as evening for people who work or may not work from home.
Yes, no, it's that's like always the biggest challenge. Like in person, it's usually just based on our schedules, it's usually morning or evening, mostly evening. Zoom gives us some flexibility, but yeah, I think we always trying to find the optimal time to meet is always a challenge. But I do think, traditionally evening times are better, but we can kind of figure that out and kind of trial. We try an evening and the turnout's low, we could try a different time. But usually we do, these type of meetings in the evenings, and we avoid Fridays and Mondays.
Committee Member Adams? No comment. Okay, great. All right, terrific. So you have support on that. I think it's a great idea as well.
So I'll follow up with Mr. Gimes to set that first one up.
Terrific. Sustainable Jersey certification, Deputy Mayor DeLuca.
Thank you, Mayor. So just a couple of things. We have some resolutions and ordinances we'd like to put before the Township Committee so that we could move forward with our application on the 22nd of May to Sustainable Jersey. In 2019, we passed a land use pledge and a green building policy. Those were resolutions, and we need to refresh those in order to get the points again from Sustainable Jersey. We also would like to pursue a green development checklist. This is a checklist that the planning board would use, or would be part of the planning board package that we would give to a developer. It would have a series of sustainable and environmental checks or standards for somebody to check off. It doesn't mean that somebody has to pass the checklist or there's any kind of a mandatory requirement, but it gives planning board, first of all, it makes the applicant think about these things, questions about tree planting and water retention and other things. And it gives the planning board an opportunity to have that conversation with the developer. So we had not done that before. That would be something new, and that would have to be done through an ordinance. And I shared with you a checklist that came out of Princeton and a checklist that came out of Long Branch. And if we would like to do something like that, then we'd work with Mr. Desiderio to design it, to draft it rather, and to have it on our agenda for the next meeting as introduction.
So the ones that you have forwarded from Princeton and the other municipality, I forget which one you said.
Long Branch.
Long Branch, that's right. Thank you. Are they based on some sort of Sustainable Jersey model?
Yes.
They are. Okay. And would such a checklist preclude us from, expanding it or changing it through our master plan discussions? Because this is going to be one of the components.
No. What I would suggest is if we could use the Sustainable Jersey one and get that approved, and then during the master plan conversation, refine it and change it, and then amend it at that time.
Right.
So that we have something now so that we can submit it for the May 22nd deadline.
Right. Works for me. Any other discussion on this? Terrific. Thank you, Deputy Mayor DeLuca, on that. And I know everyone is working hard to meet the May 22nd deadline. No pressure. And with that, we're moving on to our last discussion item, support for the community solar project. Committee Member McGehee.
Thank you, Mayor. We heard from Ms. Woods earlier this evening, who is a pillar and advocate for sustainability and also for Maplewood. And what this discussion item is about is exactly that. This is supporting green energy alternatives within our municipality, and most importantly, supporting community solar project. In 2019, the New Jersey Energy Master Plan discussed the importance of clean energy and sustainability. It came off of the construct of the Clean Energy Act of 2018. And so what we're looking to do here tonight is formally start the process to support community energy planning and action. This is something that we need to do because it will help encourage, participation. And right now we need to enhance that participation. And I'll tell you why the Energy Master Plan is very important. There's really three things that I think I want to, highlight for everyone. Is that, in supporting this community solar project, over 51% of overall solar generated from this project will be reserved for low and moderate income individuals or residents. Also, 20% of a discount for electricity from the community of solar project will be for Maplewood residents. which is also a win. And then also, I think equally important, a 15% discount on electricity from the community solar project for Maplewood residents who don't even qualify for low or moderate. So everyone gets an opportunity. So, you know, as we talked about earlier this evening about moving forward with banning leaf blowers, you know, which is another sustainable initiative, this one is also equally important as well. Finding clean energy that's going to help our environment. So I'm looking for your support, not only your support tonight. Well, you know, I look for your support tonight. I do have a draft of a resolution, but I'll work with Mr. Desiderio, and then we could potentially move this tonight, and then Mr. Desiderio can work on it. We can formally submit it post-mortem.
Thank you, Committee Member McGehee. Can you, for the public's edification, just talk about a little bit, just describe briefly what the community solar project is? What does that mean?
Yep. So the community solar project is associated with working with other commercial initiatives in the area where they will be able to create solar energy in their areas, and then we will draw on that solar energy and distribute it to residents in the community.
Terrific. Any comments on this?
If you're moving it, I would second the resolution, and Mr. Desiderio can memorialize it.
Perfect.
Great.
I am moving it.
I second it.
Awesome.
Great. Moved by Mr. McGehee, seconded by Deputy Mayor DeLuca. Is that good?
Adams,
Yes, absolutely.
Ms. Craig,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. McGehee,
Yes.
Mayor Daffis.
Yes. Thank you, Township Clerk Fritzen. This brings us to the consent agenda. Can we get a motion on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Ms. Craig,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. McGehee,
Yes.
Mayor Daffis.
Yes, I move the approval of the March 1st closed session meeting minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Yes.
Ms. Craig,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. McGehee,
Yes.
Mayor Daffis.
Yes, thank you again. This is a public comment. Second period, any subject matter, 3 minutes. Mr. Waltz, I see a couple hands up.
Good evening again, Mayor and Township Committee will now begin the second public comment portion of the meeting on any subject matter. If any meeting attendee would like to address the Township Committee at this time, please use the raise your hand function. It will convert you over to a panelist and allow you 3 minutes to speak. Before addressing the Township Committee, please state your full name and address before addressing them. Mayor, first up, we have Becky Shear. We'll convert you to a panelist and allow you 3 minutes.
Hi, guys. Sorry, I'm crazy here. I'm putting my son to bed right now. But thank you for having me. I am Becky Shear. I live at 27 Tuscan Road, and I'm across the street from Tuscan Elementary School, which is what I want to speak about. I just want to talk about how it's a pretty dangerous situation at drop off and pick up every school day at the school. I know that committee member DeLuca spoke about maybe improving the situation at drop off at Seth Boyden, which I know is also problematic. But at Tuscan, it's especially problematic this year because now, due to all the construction, parents are using the space across from the bridge on Tuscan Road as a drop-off spot. They sometimes idle their cars and double park up and down the streets to let their kids off, which creates backups on Tuscan in both directions. It's a narrow street, then it's trafficy at that time of day, and it also forces cars to have to swing around, and which are double parked to get by. So it's a pretty dangerous situation this year. And I make this comment with genuine sympathy for parents who are finding it especially difficult to drop off this year because the school's under construction. So where once was the blacktop is essentially moved over to where the teacher's parking lot was, and the teachers are now parking all up and down Tuscan, and there is not room for parents to come drop their kids off in the morning. It's a lot of cars. I know there's a situation that traffic has been ameliorated on Harvard because they did something a few years ago and made it one way. And I think that they have a designated drop-off area that's manned by traffic police. I think that's how it works on Harvard, but I really hope that they can do something similar on Tuscan, at least this year, because it's a really dangerous situation. And it's really only a matter of time before there's a car accident. Kids are crossing Tuscan at this area. And I'm hoping that the township can work together with the school or with the traffic, I guess it's the traffic police, the committee for, I don't know what it's called, but there's a traffic committee with the police office that's been, I think, recently developed. So I'm really hoping that improvements can be made here. I see it every day. I'm across the street. So thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Shearer, for that incredible input. We will look into that. And it's the Traffic Bureau, I think, that you were thinking about.
Yeah, thanks.
We will be working with them to see how we can improve this situation.
Mayor, if I may for a second.
Of course.
Ms. Shearer, thank you. I think there's an opportunity, myself and Mr. Daffis, we sit on this joint committee with the school board. We had a meeting 2 weeks ago now, I think. We'll add this to the agenda item because some of the work that our chief did, which I thought was quite brilliant in terms of traffic efficiency at Tuscan School 4 years ago now, maybe, was pre-construction. So now there needs to be a reevaluation, at least for the construction period. And not just for Tuscan. It's a good point you brought up. I think we need to look at all the construction. Clinton, everywhere we're doing construction, and see if there are similar issues. We just haven't heard about them because the public haven't spoke up on it. So I think it's a good action item.
Yeah, there might be, and I say this as a parent with elementary age kids. This is not an easy time to do a public comment. So I don't know what's happening at other schools. I know Seth Boyden, because I have friends there. It's problematic there, but there very likely could be issues at other schools. And I think you might be referring to 4 years ago how they changed the traffic patterns on Harvard. I really hope they would do something at Tuscan. It's especially bad this year because of the construction, but even when that's over, it's not great every year. And it's a serious concern. And yeah, that'd be great.
Terrific. Thank you again.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Mr. Wallace.
Mayor, next we have Heather Soslovsky. We'll convert you to a panelist. We'll allow you 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening. First, I want to thank you all for this evening. You appear to be, from beginning to end, addressing climate change, which, as we all know, is one of the most pressing issues our entire world faces, and certainly our children face. And I'm glad that we're trying not to pass along anything worse to them than we've already created. Separately, with all this traffic talk, I really wonder what happened after the 2020 meeting regarding Burnett. There was a meeting I attended on a Zoom that invited the public. It included, I believe, engineering. It included traffic study people that we'd paid for, the town had paid for, and it involved redeveloping Burnett from the Union border all the way to Springfield Avenue. I distinctly remember that meeting. I was mostly concerned about the light that was proposed at Rutgers. I know that was nixed based upon funding. But it sounded like the rest of that plan was a go. Then I never heard anything else about it, and none of it's happened but for the stop signs at Rutgers. And so now we're talking about another part of Burnett that I know was studied already. I know that parking space situation wasn't changed at the community center that was proposed. It just seems like that entire proposal that was paid for never happened. And so I'm wondering, I'm glad that you're all going to meet like with all the different committees that are involved, but I think you've done that already. So why are we recreating the wheel?
Vic, do you want to hit that?
I can talk to that. So that study was done through a state grant, and then subsequently we hired our traffic consultants to come and fine tune it. And a couple of things that were completed. Of course, you just mentioned the four-way stop at Rutgers and Burnett. We also narrowed the road there by striping on both sides of Burnett. I'm sorry, both sides of Rutgers as you come into Union and as you go to the park. We do have plans. We still have plans to continue to do that parking lot reconfiguration, which would add a sidewalk along Burnett, a rain garden in the park. The issue is funding, whether we can, it doesn't look like we can get it in this year's budget. But we're going to be talking about that Saturday. We are also looking at potentially going out and getting see if we can get some grant money for that. But that's still a plan. It's developed. We did make some improvements on crosswalks at Wellesley. We, as part of our safe streets to schools. And then there were a couple other suggestions, and that was to block off Lexington Avenue at the intersection of Burnett there. That is still being talked about and potentially making that a one-way. And then there's also the intersection at Vermont and Burnett. And then, of course, you talked about what we were talking about before. There were a number of plans at Tuscan Street and Burnett, including the possibility of putting a traffic light there, which will be coordinated with the traffic light on Springfield. That's about a $500,000 project, and we don't have money in the budget for that. So we're continuing to look at that. It's not an easy solution, even with the light, because the light has to be timed in such a way that you would have 3 reds at one time. So potentially you could block up traffic on Springfield Avenue longer than it is now, and that would create additional problems of long lines at various other lights and traffic congestion. So we're trying to do things incrementally with that intersection there by looking at the stop sign, potentially making the Tuscan one-way, and what I laid out before. But all those plans are still on the table. They're still being discussed by engineering, public works, and planning.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor DeLuca, and thank you, Ms. Kozlowski, for addressing this tonight and being with us and joining us. Thank you for those important points. Our next hand up, I believe, is from our Youth Advisory Committee member, Justin Struger.
Okay, good evening, Township Committee. I'm Justin Struger, and I just wanted to take a quick moment and speak about my optimism for the Youth Advisory Committee for the 2022 year. I've just really enjoyed, spending the last 3 hours learning a lot about, some of the operations and local ordinances that have recently come up, from everything from leaf blowers to policing reform to pedestrian safety over the last few hours has been really fascinating, and I think could be incorporated a lot of ways to things local teens can address. In the past, the Youth Advisory Committee has somewhat struggled with overly ambitious initiatives. We had a plan for a Safe Rides pilot program, which would allow kids who are under the influence to get safely home in situations where we don't want them driving or using transportation. And as much as I think it was a great message and had a good idea to it, I think it was just too difficult to successfully incorporate and be carried out by teens. And I think our the new era of the Youth Advisory Committee, with more specific objectives of streamlining communication among social justice groups and getting teens more involved on local ordinances that already exist, are things we can easily achieve. And I'm just really excited for what the Youth Advisory Committee can do. And I really want to thank Mr. Taffis and Township Committee member McGeehee for all you've done for the Township, for the YIC over the last few years. And I'm very, very excited for what we can accomplish in the 2020 year. So thank you so much, and have a good night, Township Committee.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you for joining us, man. We look forward to a great year ahead with you. Thank you. Mr. Waltz, do we have any other members of the public who wish to speak?
I see no one else, Mayor.
Okay, well then I motion that we adjourn and see everyone back here again on April 5th at 7:30 PM.
Second.
Second.
Adams,
Yes.
Oh.
good night.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. McGehee,
Yes, please.
Why do you do it so slow when it's the end of the meeting?
because I'm just overjoyed. Mayor Davis.
Yes, thank you all. Have a good night.
Bye, Liz. Go Nova.
Go